Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. We begin with developing news in Manitoba, where there has been a mass casualty event in Hollow Water First Nation. Manitoba RCMP say earlier this morning, multiple people in the nation were stabbed. Police are confirming that at least 8 victims have been transported to hospital. One victim is an RCMP officer, and one victim, the suspect's sister, is deceased. The suspect himself is also deceased. The incident comes on the 3-year anniversary of the mass stabbing in James Smith Cree Nation in northern Saskatchewan, though RCMP say this incident happened on purely coincidence. Julia Ross reports.
Early this morning, members of the Hollow Water First Nation awoke to devastating and tragic news within their very tight-knit, loving community.
According to Manitoba RCMP, the first initial call came in at 3:44 a.m. Thursday morning in the Hollow Water First Nation, located about 200 kilometers northeast of Winnipeg.
Early this morning at 3:45 a.m., a First Nation safety officer contacted the RCMP to advise that 30 minutes prior, an assault had taken place in Hollow Water First Nation. He advised that the suspect had fled the scene and emergency medical services were requested to attend.
Then, at 5:53 a.m., RCMP received a call about a potential stabbing in the community and multiple officers were dispatched. When they arrived at the scene, multiple individuals were suffering from stab wounds and RCMP were alerted to a second residence with additional victims also suffering from stab wounds.
The families were very close to me. And my deepest condolences to the family right now. So I'll pray as hard as I could for the recovery. And that's all I'd like to say right now. Community to get together, do their prayers, support one another right now.
8 people, ages 18 to 60 years old, were injured early Thursday morning. 6 were transported by ground ambulance, while 2 were airlifted by STARS. An 18-year-old woman who was killed was the sister of the suspect. The suspect has been identified as 26-year-old Tyrone Simard from Hollow Water First Nation, who is also now deceased.
In total, 8 community members ranging in age from 18 to 60 years of age had sustained injuries during this incident. We can confirm, sadly, that an 18-year-old female has died as a result of these injuries. Following the stabbings, the suspect, who was Tyrone Simard, who was a 26-year-old male from the community of Hollow Water, fled the community in a stolen vehicle and fled south towards the community of Black River. The vehicle was located by the RCMP near Black River First Nation, traveling south on PR Highway 304. It was at this time, when the vehicle was located at approximately 6:53 a.m., that the suspect collided with the RCMP cruiser that was driving northbound towards the scene to respond. The suspect, Tyrone, succumbed to his injuries on scene.
The female RCMP officer was seriously injured when her vehicle and Simard's stolen vehicle struck one another. While Simard died of his injuries from the collision, the officer is expected to make a full recovery. Both the Manitoba RCMP and Premier Wab Canoe call the officer a hero, who was seriously hurt while protecting the people of Manitoba.
Without any doubt, she put her life at risk for the safety and security of Manitobans, and I wish to extend my heartfelt thanks to her and to all the RCMP officers who responded this morning.
One of whom is a police officer, who we're still finding out the details of what happened about, but we can say that she is a hero. We don't know the specifics yet. We will in the coming days, I'm sure. But she stopped a man on a rampage. So on behalf of the province of Manitoba, I thank her.
In a statement to APTN News, a Shared Health spokesperson confirmed that a Code Orange alert was declared at the Health Sciences Centre in Winnipeg and 6 patients were transported by ground and STARS air helicopters. They added, Julia Ross, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And we will have much more on this later in the show when our Truth and Politics panelists Negan Sinclair and Jennifer Leywitz join us. If you need support today, you can call the Hope for Wellness helpline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for counseling and crisis intervention. That number is 1-855-242-3310, or connect to the online chat at www.hopeforwellness.ca and follow the links. To the Assembly of First Nations AGA now, and while day one of the Assembly was dominated by the Carney government's One Economy Act and how this could affect Indigenous rights, day two dealt with issues closer to home, such as the opioid crisis and need for increased funding for First Nations policing. There was also a discussion in the afternoon about the uncertain future of long-term reform in the First Nations child welfare system. APTN's Fraser Needham has more.
Mark Arcan says opioid drug use amongst First Nations people in Saskatoon has reached crisis levels in recent years. The head of the Saskatoon Tribal Council was part of a panel discussion on the issue at the AFN Assembly Thursday morning. He says more funding for First Nations mental health and addiction services is needed, but does not favor safe consumption sites.
Well, I don't support our safe consumption site in Saskatoon because it's not getting people off of drugs. It's leading to more problems because at the end of the day, it's a safe place for people to go, but they're still continuing to use drugs, so we're not solving anything.
First Nations policing advocates have been pushing Ottawa for years to pass legislation recognizing it as an essential service. During another panel discussion, First Nations Chiefs of Police Association President Jerry Swamp told delegates the issue appears to have fallen off the radar of the Carney government, despite being promised by former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in 2020.
But I don't feel that First Nation policing is a priority right now for public safety. They're prioritizing everything towards the border and the opioid crisis, but First Nation policing is on the back burner right now. I feel that it's probably going to be on the back burner for the next few years.
Things have been at a standstill in long-term reform in First Nations child welfare since Chiefs voted down a $47.8 billion agreement at an assembly in October 2024. Pauline Frost of the National Children's Chiefs Commission told delegates they have repeatedly tried to get Ottawa to discuss a new agreement, but to no avail.
We have taken various measures and approaches to negotiate with Canada, or tried to get Canada back to the table to negotiate unsuccessfully. And to this point, I met a week ago with, or 2 weeks ago with Minister Galmasti. I met with the ADM. We have written numerous letters to encourage Canada to come back to the table, all without success.
Cindy Blackstock of the Caring Society also had some stark words for the Carney government, that delaying an agreement on long-term reform will only cost Ottawa more in the end.
Discrimination does not pay. That's fool's gold. And we've already seen it in this case because Canada had the solutions in 2000. They chose not to implement them, and they've had to pay out $23.4 billion to poor children who lost their lives and their childhoods. They'll never get that back.
The Canadian Human Rights Tribunal recently called on Ottawa to get back to the negotiating table. The Assembly continues Friday morning with the discussion of repatriation of artifacts and the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Saugeen First Nations fight to be recognized as the rightful owner of a popular tourist destination spot in Ontario has now ended. 2 years ago, they won the battle at the Ontario Court of Appeal, and last week the Supreme Court of Canada upheld that decision. Here's Annette Francis with more.
This popular vacation spot is officially now in the hands of the rightful owners. It's no longer known as Sauble Beach. With a few corrections in lettering, it's officially Saugeen Beach. Lawyer Noonie Frame says it's been a long time coming.
I mean, the battle began back in the 1850s. Saugeen signed their treaty, now called Treaty 72, back in 1854. And almost immediately, the Crown breached the treaty promise to establish a reserve with the boundaries that had been agreed on. And Saugeen people had been advocating since the 19th century to have their reserve land recognized and to have the beach particularly recognized as part of the reserve. Into the 60s and 70s, Saugeen people became more active in advocating with their treaty partners.
The beach has been attracting vacationers since the early 1900s. The town of Bruce Peninsula and a few private landowners have been pushing back with hopes of holding the title. Their appeal was lost at the Supreme Court of Canada last week. It's a huge vindication.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a process of healing and a process of coming together, something that I know the Saugeen people and Saugeen leadership are always prepared to do. They've always wanted and were clear in their testimony at trial that good relations with their non-Indigenous neighbors are critical.
The property runs on the northern edge of Saugeen First Nation. Frame says it's a small but an important piece of land with about 2.2 kilometers of beachfront.
It was critical to their fishery. Whitefish and lake herring were fished along Saugeen Beach in huge numbers. It was a gathering place for their citizens and for allied nations to come together at the council fire to talk about issues of importance. And it was a critical way for Saugeen people to move up the peninsula towards Chiefs Point, which is a second reserve that they have, which was another critical gathering place.
According to Frame, the next step is compensation for dispossession of reserve land for 170 years, either by negotiations or litigation. But right now they'll celebrate. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Saugeen First Nation.
A new report from 3 nonprofits indicates that there needs to be more electric school buses on the road across Canada. APTN's Chris Stewart spoke with 2 of the authors of that study and has more.
The 65-page report by Green Communities Canada, the Canadian School Bus Alliance, and Equiterre says that of the 51,000 school buses in Canada, only 1,900 or 4% are electric. And 70% of current diesel buses need replacement in the next 2 to 7 years. The report says they should be replaced with electric. Nicole Roach is a co-author of the report.
So we do see strong leadership in provinces like British Columbia, Quebec, and PEI, but we also see a lot of provinces and other communities that really haven't adopted any or really falling behind in that transition.
The report says Indigenous communities are lacking electric buses due to several factors.
It costs a lot more to operate school transportation in remote northern Indigenous communities, primarily due to remoteness, longer travel distances, and poor road conditions. We also heard that school staff often have to multitask. So different people are filling in as school bus drivers, which makes it really challenging to adopt new technology.
Valerie Tremblay is also a co-author. She says the goal is to have 100% electric school buses by 2040. And diesel buses need to be phased out for the health of kids and to help the environment.
So we have our children that are in those buses, around those buses all day long, every day, that are inhaling the same pollutants. So we think one of the main reasons for making this transition is the health of children. There are also other associated impact like reduction of GHG emissions. Economic-wise, in the long term, ESB's electric school buses tend to be cheaper since they need less maintenance. Electricity also tend to cost less than diesel or gas.
The report has several recommendations, including dedicated government-funded revenue streams for acquiring electric school buses and infrastructure. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
Time for a quick break, but stick around. Our Truth and Politics panel will be here in 3 minutes from now. Welcome back. As we told you earlier in the show, at least 2 people are dead, including the suspect, after multiple stabbings in Hollowater First Nation in Manitoba. The tragic incident conjures up memories from the mass stabbing in James Smith Cree Nation in Saskatchewan, which happened on this very day 3 years ago. For more, our Truth and Politics panels here. Negon Sinclair is a columnist with the Winnipeg Free Press, and Jennifer Leywitz is the CEO of Pusquash Strategies. Jennifer, Negon, thanks to you both for joining us. Negon, as we've been reporting another terrible tragedy this morning in Hollowater First Nation, your thoughts on what we're hearing?
Well, I wish that people cared and had as much reaction to these kinds of moments as they do to be proactive and to be, this is not an issue that takes place overnight. This is an issue that's taken place for years of chronic underfunding, trauma, and then a lack of mental health supports within communities. And my phone blew up this morning because everybody wants to know the reaction. Everybody wants to send their hopes and prayers. But the fact is that we need to be dealing with these issues for years beforehand to be engaging the critical issues that lead to these kinds of situations. So I send all my wishes to those in Hollowater. My family comes from Manicatogan, which is the same community. We're Samards, and so I send my great thoughts, and certainly I'll be making a lot of phone calls tonight to figuring out who's been impacted most by this.
Jennifer, you work closely with James Smith Cree Nation. Today is the 3rd anniversary of the mass stabbings there. It must be an extraordinarily difficult day there today too.
Yeah, it's especially with the news coming out today, you know, I don't know how the community is processing this news because it's all happening so quickly, and it's been, you know, across social media for the last couple of hours. I know the chief, you know, it's one of those things, exactly what Negon said. Like, there's still a lot of areas that are chronically underfunded and areas that we need to address and we need to fix, and we need the federal government and the provincial government support in these areas, everything from child welfare, addiction, poverty, all of those things. But it just seems like the tires are continuing to spin when it comes to how we engage with the provinces and the feds, where it just doesn't seem like they understand. I will say that it is a positive time for James Smith right now with going into the powwow, but it's going to be, you know, a very tough day for a lot of people, and I'm sending all of my thoughts and my prayers, as cliche and very surface level as that sounds, because as Indigenous people, all we can really do is continue to process what's happened and continue to advocate for better solutions and better outcomes from the federal government.
Negon, of course, we don't know all the details here yet, but the Assembly of First Nations is expecting to be discussing a resolution on public safety and policing substance use and the drug crisis this week. The resolution is calling for a First Nations-wide state of emergency right across the country to be called. Do you think that could have an impact on the violence and drug use, trafficking that we're seeing nonstop?
Well, I mean, what else can be done? When you call it a state of emergency in 640 plus communities, you have to take attention. You know, the rest of the country has to stand up and say, well, what's going on? And the fact is that there is this chronic issue of the lack of justice on First Nations for many years. Those of us who were on reserve, we saw police once a week, maybe a few hours at a time. And so in many situations, we were also banned from having our own police and our own justice systems. And so, I mean, what else is there for First Nations to do than to call a state of emergency? And if we're going to be disallowed from having our own policing, our own justice systems, then I feel a great deal of empathy for leadership that they have to take these dire measures to be able to be direct with the Canadian government to say that this is enough already, because this isn't just impacting First Nations. This isn't just impacting Indigenous communities. This is impacting the entire justice system as a whole. It takes resources. It takes a great deal of care and concern, because many of our relatives who are suffering from mental health challenges that end up participating in some of these violent acts then end up in the provincial healthcare system, end up in living in municipalities, and they end up engaging with police forces in places like cities. And so we have to really deal with this as a Canadian issue, because it was Canada that created this great immense amount of trauma, and the outcome of that is seen in terrible tragedies like today.
Jennifer, you kind of touched on this a bit, but thoughts on what more could be done to prevent another such tragedy?
I think, addressing the root cause, and I know that that's something we talk a lot about that, but there seems to be a lot of issues that we still cannot get through, and chronic underfunding is one of the biggest ones. We talk about child welfare, prevention, protection, addictions, mental health, but when the nations are struggling to get those resources on the ground and everything is so bureaucratic, it's really hard to not only create those systems, fund those systems well, and then maintain them long term. So I think there's still a lot of work ahead of us. I know, Bill C-92 is a start with reclaiming our jurisdiction over our children, because those broken systems are what lead to a lot of these issues, especially breakdown of family and the issues that it causes. I know it's had a ripple in my own family. So I think that's a place where we can start, is, continuing to do what we can. And then on our part, it's a lot of hard work. There's no truth to be watered down there. It's an incredible amount of work. We're going to require a lot of really good leadership right now. We're going to require a lot of people in our spaces that have the energy and the desire to actually want to fix these things.
We'll leave it there. Of course, our thoughts are with Hollowwater First Nation and James Smith Cree Nation today, but we'll continue the conversation over on the podcast. Thanks to you both. Time for one last quick break, but stick around. There's more to come. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And a beautiful sunset was the backdrop in northern British Columbia. And thanks to Keith West for sharing this photo with us all. Keep those photos coming by sending them to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, smoky and 21 for Halifax, sunny and 22 in Charlottetown. Rain and 20 in Kuujjuaq, cloudy and 6 in Nain. Sun's out and 25 in Montreal, cloudy and 14 in Chibougamau. 13 with showers in Sault Ste. Marie, cloudy and 22 in Ottawa. 10 in Thunder Bay, Cloudy and a high of 6 for Sioux Lookout. 11 for God's Lake, 14 in Norway House. 17 in Winnipeg, 14 in Dauphin. 15 in Regina, 18 in Saskatoon. 18 in Meadow Lake, sunny and 11 for La Ronge. I gather these are the exact same ones as you had for noon. In northern Alberta, 23 with the sun out in High Level, 15 and sunny in Fort Chipewyan. 23 and sunny in Edmonton, sun's out, and 25 in Lethbridge. 25 and sunny in Vancouver, 32 under sunny skies in Kamloops. 29 in Prince George, sunny, and 28 for Smithers. 12 with showers in Old Crow, 24 in Whitehorse. 16 and sunny in Yellowknife, 22 with the sun out in Norman Wells. Cloudy and 6 in Sax Harbor, 14 in Pawlatuck. 7 with rain in Chesterfield, sunny and a high of 9 for Baker Lake. -2 in Resolute, 1 below in Arctic Bay. Promise you those are tomorrow's weather forecasts. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Thursday. You can find more on the incident in Hollow First Nation and other stories over on our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy McGuitch, thanks for being with us. Have a safe night.